everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi 1550 AM. This is Sonia, your show host. I am the founder of Orbis86, where we are onboarding people to the exciting world of Web3 and AI. And joining me in the studio today, we have Nischal, who is the head of product at Metajuice. Nischal, we are really excited to have you here with us. Welcome to the Silicon Dreams.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Sonia. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here with us. So, Nischal, I would love for you to talk to our audiences, people who have tuned into the Silicon Dreams, and delve a little bit into your background. What have you been doing in Web3, and what did you do before you transitioned over to Web3?
Absolutely. So I started off my career as a consultant, as a career consultant. I worked a lot in the first decade of my career on Web2 technologies, SaaS companies specifically. And then post that, over the last 6 years, I've been working in crypto. I was at a company called Ripple Labs that focused on cross-border payments, and I headed up a technical team there. And after that, I was at an NFT company. And then most recently, I'm at a metaverse company where I head up everything related to token operations and their crypto products.
That is exciting. So, folks, if you know, the birth of blockchain was with the Bitcoin paper, which was released in 2008. And then Bitcoin was officially launched in 2009. So crypto has barely been around for a decade and a half. And Nischal has been working in the Web3 crypto space for over 6 to 7 years now. So he definitely has a lot of experience. Crypto really started picking up worldwide momentum, I believe, in 2012, 2013, when we had a lot of new chains being launched. Nischal, given your background in both the traditional finance sector, as well as what you're doing in the Web3 space, I would love for you to just talk to us about why do you think this decentralized era of Web3 was even birthed? Why do you think people felt the need of decentralized systems, especially starting with a decentralized ledger, which is what blockchain is?
Absolutely. So I think the birth of decentralization actually started in 2008 when Satoshi created Bitcoin. So I still remember that period. I was out of school for just a few years, and it was tumultuous, to say the least. I was in my first job, and then there were so many companies that laid off people. Times were really difficult. The country went through a horrible recession, probably the worst since the Great Depression. And I think Satoshi created the problem during that time. What caused it was all the bank failures. The bank had overlent, and then there was all these centralized banks that went down. People lost money in the banks, and luckily the feds came and backstopped all of that. But just looking at the history of that, when you look at the core, the problem was the banks just had too much power. So I think that was kind of the birth of Bitcoin, and Satoshi created Bitcoin to effectively decentralize the financial system. So that was the inception, or the idea of why should only the banks or the Federal Reserve control the money? Why can't everyone have control over their own money? The whole Web3 movement kind of took off from there, where it was not just money, but why can't you own your own digital property? Why can't you take self-custody of that? And, how do you actually own all the intellectual assets that you create? So I think that was, the early days. I would still say we are still very early. I think decentralization, cryptocurrencies obviously has a long way to go. There's still no regulations, unfortunately, in most countries. So we are still catching up. And the technology is very complex, so it takes a while for people to understand. But once you get to know it, you can understand how powerful it is. It's just like AI and ML. It's a very, very disruptive technology. And hopefully there's regulation that can foster the growth of the industry. It's just like, the internet was in the early days, in the 90s and all that. We had very forward-looking regulation, and the industry has thrived in America, and we have the Facebook, Google, Apples, and Netflix of the world. So we are kind of in the 90s. We are still, as a lot of people say, is in the dial-up era. And I think in the next bull cycle, we'll see a lot more applications. I know a lot of founders who are working on very interesting projects. A lot of people are bringing real world assets into blockchain. So I think over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of protocols, a lot of companies out there, the next Googles of the world, Facebooks of the world being built on the blockchain.
Before we move ahead, I want to touch base on what we spoke of, right? The inception of Bitcoin. So,
Yeah.
for the benefit of the audience who don't know who or what Satoshi is, Satoshi Nakamoto is actually an anonymous creator. So, nobody knows whether it is a person, a group of people, a collective, an AI model, who knows, right? We don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. And Satoshi used to be active in the community, but sometime in 2012 or 2013,
Correct.
there was a message from Satoshi who said, the community is building, I've done my job and I'm leaving. And no one has actually heard from Satoshi since then. There are some wallets that people track that they think are associated with Satoshi, but beyond that, nobody really knows who Satoshi is, whether it's a single person, a guy, girl, an alien. Nobody knows anything about it. And there have been a lot of theories around why Satoshi actually came up with the concept of Bitcoin. And I love the fact that you brought the financial downfall that we actually experienced in 2008.
Yeah.
And it had a butterfly effect, not just on economies within United States, but economies across the globe. The global economy, the global GDP is 96 trillion, out of which 27 trillion alone today comes from United States alone. So for a country that generates 1/3 of the world's GDP, any financial impact here is bound to have that butterfly effect. And Lehman Brothers collapse of 2008 is still the largest recorded bankruptcy filing.
Yeah.
Adjusted for today's inflation rate, it was a filing of nearly $750 billion, or 3/4 of $1 trillion.
Right.
What people don't check beyond it, though, is the housing market collapse was even larger. $13 trillion from the housing market were wiped out within a matter of days. Right. So the concept of having power over your own finances, your own data, that is what seems to have resulted in the birth of decentralization, a decentralized finance system, because blockchain started as a ledger, right? Like you can be your own bank.
Correct.
You don't need any intermediaries.
Yeah.
That was the idea. Do you think it is doing well, given where it started and where we are at now?
Yeah, I mean, we could always hope for more, but it's a complex technology. It takes a while to understand. And because until there's more regulations around the space, the growth may be slower. But, one thing I have noticed is there's a lot of unbanked people in the world. I was one of them when I came here first as a student. I didn't have a bank account. There was no one to vouch for me. So it takes a while for you to establish credibility, establish credit, so that you can get a bank account, you can start getting credit. So one thing that is really interesting is the biggest adopters of crypto are very young people. There's a lot of adoption in third world countries where the banking system may not be as strong, where the cost to just move money, if I wanted to send money to someone else, it's very expensive. And in my previous jobs, I've traveled to some of these countries while working on cross-border payments, and I've seen where things like remittances support a lot of countries. People working in, for example, in India, a lot of people work in the Middle East. They're sending money each week or each month.
Can you break down the term remittance for the average Joe? What is remittance? We all have heard it. What is it?
Yeah, so remittance is a scenario where there's a migrant worker, someone who's working in a different country, and they're sending back money to their family or their loved one, kids or whoever.
A lot of listeners of Radio Zindagi would be familiar with that because a lot of them are from India and people are sending over money to India. So let's continue. So with remittances, which countries did you travel to?
Yeah, so one of the first projects that we did was we set up remittances from the US into Mexico, which is obviously from the US, I think it's one of the biggest remittance corridors. So a lot of people, again, workers here support families in Mexico. And then we did a lot of work in the Middle East. So in the Middle East, there's a lot of people from South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Southeast Asia, Vietnam. There's a lot of Filipinos there. And they send money. Typically, they get paid weekly or bi-weekly. And they may not make a lot of money, but they have families to support. And whatever money they have, they send it back to their families. And unfortunately, it's very expensive, even today, to send money back. On average, it's anywhere, depending on which country you send money into, 6 to 8% is what you'll end up paying between the banking fees and exchange rate. The money service bureaus make money on fees. They'll charge you a fee. plus they have a spread on the exchange rate. So if, for example, the rupee is 81.5, you're not going to get that rate. You'll get like 82.5 or 83 or whatever. So they make money on that, and on average it's anywhere from 6 to 8%. It's what it costs you to send money.
Generally, in a remittance, it's said that at least 6 parties are involved in a remittance being settled from the sender to the receiver, and everybody needs to make money along the way.
Yeah, everybody needs to make money. And one of the things that you realize as you're working on this problem is, for a lot of these people who are supporting their families, they're spending probably 2 weeks a year or 3 weeks a year, depending on where you're sending, just to pay the intermediaries to support their families. So that's the amount of work they're putting. So it's kind of like a tax that they don't even see, that they're paying to all the middlemen to send money to their loved ones.
And it's not just that, right? If you think about it, in a lot of the countries, as you said, these people are still unbanked. So they have to walk up to Walmarts of the world or Western Union, spend time in lines there during their working hours or after a long day at work.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time, wait in line.
Exactly.
And many a times those remittances are not instantaneous. So their family has to wait for another day, 2, 3 days, how much ever time it takes to settle, to collect the payment.
Yeah, that's true. That's a frustrating part. And in that sense, India was much ahead of the game.
India is much ahead of the game.
We have the UPI system there. So while we were working in the Middle East, we saw a lot of migrant workers would stand in line in front of the bureau, and they would be messaging with their family on WhatsApp or one of these messaging applications, and their family would be there at the bank, or they would wait till they got a SMS saying the money arrived in the account. So they'd wait until they receive the message, which could be a few minutes. But like you said, there are other countries where you could have to wait 3 days, 4 days, or up to a week to actually get money into your account. And in the meantime, you have no idea where the money's at. Is it's reached the country, not reached the country?
There is no tracking. It's a black box. Once you give it, you just have to trust the financial institution to get your money safely to the person you're sending it. And there have been instances where the money has been lost en route.
Exactly, yep.
Getting that money back is a different hassle altogether, and it can take weeks to months to get your money reimbursed if it doesn't reach the right recipient.
Yep.
I believe that blockchain, because of the transparency, the absolute transparency, it just makes it so much easier. You can see how the money is flowing.
Exactly.
And in the past few years, we have had a concern with rising gas fees. Because I would sometimes go on Ethereum and the cost to send $100 could be as high as $10 to $20, which was more higher than traditional systems.
Yeah.
But now we have a lot of other options to send money over. You want to touch upon some of that?
Yeah. Ethereum was obviously the first form of programmable money. And this is where you could actually tell how you wanted your money to be used. So you could, say, I want this money to be used for medicines, or I want to give it as a grant to someone, or anything like that. So
maybe let's talk about what Bitcoin was and what Ethereum introduced.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times people think everything on blockchain is the same. Everything is just a new currency, and either people are for it or people are against it. Many times people think that, all of these new chains and ledgers that are coming up, they are just another way to launch another cryptocurrency.
Correct.
So people can raise money. And I'm not denying the fact that we have not had frauds. We have had a lot of fraudulent actors in this space, like in many other spaces, right?
Correct.
We would be in a good position if we did not forget what happened in 2000 with the .com burst. You had anytime anything is popular, unfortunately, you have fraudulent actors, and that is when you have to filter out the good actors and figure out who are the bad players. But that being said, would you love to touch upon how Bitcoin started, what exactly Bitcoin was, and then why was Ethereum such a revolutionary change?
So Bitcoin was pretty basic relative to some of the more advanced cryptocurrencies we see these days. It was, like you mentioned, a ledger. It was just to keep track of how much money or how much Bitcoin each person owned. So if Soniya had 2 Bitcoin, I had 1 Bitcoin, it would just keep track of the balances. Around 2014, 2016 timeframe, there was this really young, smart, at the time he was a kid, he was only less than 18 or something, called Vitalik Buterin, who came on the scene. And he was like, what if you could actually program that money? It's like money should be programmable.
He used to write for Bitcoin. He was part of Bitcoin community. He used to write for Bitcoin magazine. And then he came up with the concept of the programmable money. For people's information, Bitcoin in its most basic form, and Bitcoin, the community votes on how to update it. So it does keep getting upgraded. But even today, not just Bitcoin, but for a lot of these chains, you don't have all financial processes baked into them.
Correct.
So for example, one of the things that's missing from a lot of these layer 1s, layer 2s also is refunds. So you can't use it for e-commerce, for example, today, right? But with Ethereum, you can program how the money flows.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was the concept, was you could actually program money, and it was essentially programmable money. So if I wanted to give, let's say, 10 Ethereum to my daughter once she turned 18, I could write that into a smart contract, and the money is going to stay locked up there. When she turns 18, she'll get the money. So it was something as simple as that you could program a lot of things into it. And it made a lot of sense. Governments, for example, you see they distribute money for things like, in India, we have the ration system where you get ration cards, you got to prove who you are, and then you get the money released. But obviously there's a lot of fraud and waste there. And the idea was, what if you could say, hey, you can only spend this money on food, kind of like food stamps are, right? But what if you could program that into the money itself? So that was the idea of Ethereum, was let's build a layer of smart contracts where you can, the creator or the person who locks that money up can say how that money can be used.
And one of the key features of ledgers of technology like blockchain has been the immutability of the chain. And it is attributed to strong cryptography. So nobody can come in and hack and mutate the chain and fudge the transaction, so as to say. That being said, the concept of smart contracts, right? I think that is very intriguing because, as you said, it brings that layer of programmability. And what it also does is smart contracts, there are upgradable smart contracts, but there are parts of a smart contract that are completely immutable. And you can also just deploy immutable smart contracts. So one of the most interesting things here is there is no human interaction involved. So you're creating a trustless ecosystem, which is actually more trustworthy, right? Because you can look at the smart contract and tell exactly what will happen. So for example, the case of the ration card, the rationing that you spoke of. If money was fed into a smart contract without any prejudice, without any bias, without taking any bribe, would give it to the person who proves that they are eligible to get a portion of the ration. And the smart contract can be programmed to figure out what that percentage is supposed to be. Right? And the most important thing is this person gets it directly in their wallet. So there is no money interchanging hands with a lot of middlemen involved. And you can see that entire flow on chain. This introduces a lot of forums to battle corruption, create real-time processing systems, right? Where again, it's not just remittances, but just a peer-to-peer trustless, however, a more trustworthy system where sending money, receiving money becomes very easy. We were talking about India, right? We were talking about India's adoption of digital payments. How do you compare that to blockchain, to Web3?
Yeah, so I always tell people, if blockchain, once it gets to the masses, it would be what UPI in India right now is. In India, you see street vendors, your chai wala, your tele wala, pani puri wala, everyone is on UPI. And we were in Europe a couple of months back, and we used this touchless system. And my wife was like, oh, we wish we had this in America everywhere, because not all the stores here have touchless. And I was like,
the NFC thing?
Exactly, NFC, where you just touch the card, whereas a lot of stores here like Walmart, still you got to insert the card.
They are upgrading now.
They're in the process of upgrading, but we felt like the US is behind on payments. And then I was like,
in Europe, NFC has been around for a while.
Even for a long time.
Even the BART equivalent, right? You don't have to necessarily get a Clipper card. You can pay with your Google Pay directly.
Exactly. But when you look at India, that's leagues ahead, because there's no even touching a card. There's just a QR code. You scan the QR code. You can pay anyone who's on that system. And the beauty about UPI is it's not just the banks. In the US here, obviously, we have the Venmo and Zelle, which is a few banks who are working together to set that up.
But there are transaction fees involved.
They have transaction fees. They have limits, I think $3,000 a week or something like that on Zelle. And then you have to be registered with Zelle and things like that. But with UPI, it's set up across by NPCI, and any banks like Google Pay is on it. You could be a payment technology company. You can offer UPI. I believe BMAP, you could do it without a bank account as well. So they have managed to even bring like the unbanked, the chaiwala who never had a bank account. He can now accept payments. And one of the beautiful, one of these things I heard on a show recently was all these people that were giving all the toffee companies out of business, because whenever you didn't have small change, you typically give a toffee in return.
There has been a case study, which is an interesting case study, right? That business has actually gone down in India ever since you have had these digital forms of payments being widely accepted.
Exactly.
The business of the toffee companies has actually gone down, which is interesting. And the other thing is that India is integrating with partner countries like, I believe, Singapore and other countries where UPI is now being accepted as a form of payment, which is a huge thing. Globally, I believe 30 to 40% of world's digital transactions are actually processed on India's infrastructure on UPI. And the second largest country processing digital remittances, I believe, China. That is way behind at about 17%.
Yeah. And China, I think, was one of the first ones to get into digital payments, but India has raced ahead ever since UPI was introduced. And back when we were working on remittances, we still had RTGS, NEFT. They're still around, IMPS. And even NEFT was much better than a lot of the other systems. Within an hour,
is still better than a lot of...
within an hour, you'd have money in your account. Now, I think it's like 30 minutes. So within 30 minutes of you actually sending...
It is very quick.
It was very quick. But then UPI has taken it to a whole different level.
Yes.
And the beauty about UPI is it's free. So it's free for everyone, and people actually don't even feel...
That is the most important thing, right? Like, I know you spoke about Zelle and Venmo, but it is still very cumbersome.
Correct.
When you go to a vendor and they say, hey, you can buy this with Zelle. Now you have to log into your bank app, open Zelle, ask them what their number is, right? With Venmo, it's probably a little lesser cumbersome because you can load up Venmo and you can scan the QR code. And with Google Pay integration in India, the UPI integration, it's exactly the same.
Exactly.
Across the stores or the tailors, you just have somebody with their QR code and they tell you to scan that QR code and immediately send them the payment, which makes it so much easier. Not as cumbersome as some of the systems that we have here. So Venmo is not that widely accepted for checkouts. However, the one thing that people may or may not know, because a lot of us use Venmo for personal payments and we don't pay any transaction fees. But the moment Venmo is used by merchants, they have to pay transaction processing fees, which is at least 2.7%. It might not be as high as 6 to 8% that sometimes Amex and these gateways charge. But it is 2.7%. However, with UPI, there are absolutely no payment fees.
Exactly. There's no payment fees even for merchants. And that's where you see... when crypto gets mainstream and there's cheaper technologies out there, faster blockchains which can process for cheaper, it'll essentially look like UPI, where the chaiwala, if he sells a chai for 10 rupees,
he gets it
right away.
Maybe 9.998 rupees.
Exactly. You don't have to give 30 paise to a payment company.
Yes, or more than that.
More than that, to process that.
Yes, for smaller businesses, that has always been unfair. Smaller businesses tend to pay much higher fees than larger businesses because they have lesser volume.
Exactly. They cannot negotiate those discounts. And for a really small businessman who's, someone who's selling vegetables on the street, it never made sense to get a payment terminal, accept credit cards. They would never get an account open to begin with, right? But UPI has completely revolutionized it, where they can set up that for free. All they need is a smartphone, right? To have a QR code ready. You can scan it. And I've seen recently, I think they even have like a speaker which will give a readout of how much was actually credited to your account.
Yes, the speaker just goes off immediately. So the merchants know that, okay, the money was sent.
Exactly.
That's some really simple but cool use of technology, right? That we are seeing there. Here, we know we have Square, for example. Even Square doesn't have technology like that.
Correct.
You go to a food cart or something, you spend at least 2 minutes processing the payment, even with Square. Square or any POS that they have, right? You spend at least 2 minutes over there. It's not really that instantaneous. But more importantly, with these small businesses, with systems like this, they easily end up paying anywhere between 3 to 7%.
Correct.
Right? When they are working with all of these POS systems, as you said, they cannot really negotiate.
Yeah.
Now, in the grand scheme of things, they decide to turn it into a business expense.
Yeah.
But for any small business, it's even making $10,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times, their break even is very close to 10,000. Right? Unless you make a lot of money, your break even tends to be very close to the money you make. So these people, a lot of the money that comes goes in expenses.
Yeah.
So 3 to 8% of that total amount, $300 to $800, is actually a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And
businesses.
you look at, like you mentioned, the chai wala or the vegetable vendor on the street, right? They have a lot of competition. Their margins are super slim. And that 3 or 6 or 8%, whatever that is, could be make and break for them.
Exactly.
So this really makes a difference for the marginalized people, the people at the very bottom of the social scale who are just trying to make a living. So they get access, once they actually build, even if they don't have an account, they can actually build history, and they can in the future get access to credit. They can get access to microfinance. There's all these possibilities that are opened up that they would never have gotten before if they just strictly dealt with cash.
And I know we spoke about how blockchain is and DLTs are yet to catch up with full remittance, e-commerce, financial systems. However, one of the things that has now been around for a couple of years or more are different lending protocols on chain. And these lending protocols are again not biased with your history. There are smart contracts monitoring them. So the process is very clear. You have absolute transparency into what is needed.
Yeah.
And if you lock up, how much are you going to pay? How can you get back the item you have locked up? So those lending protocols are adding a new layer of transactions, and they are also bringing in a new audience into the Web3 era. The one thing I wanted to talk to you about, though, was we were talking about people leveraging all of this tech for finance, right? We have been talking about these financial ecosystems. There's also a huge talk when we talk about Web3, right? Web3 is a group of decentralized systems. So we are not building conglomerates. We are rather empowering the community. A lot of talk on Web3 has also been around data ownership.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on that?
So that's the reason why I got more passionate about the space as I was working through it, is when the whole concept of non-fungible tokens came around, because a lot of people dismiss it, and rightfully so, saying people are...
They don't want monkey pictures.
Yeah, monkey pictures. You guys are just trading monkey pictures. But the concept of digital ownership is very powerful. Right now, all of our data is controlled by one of the big companies. It's either Facebook, Google, Amazon, all of these companies who essentially sell them. So they sell it to advertisers. And, there's that saying that if you don't know what the product is, then you are the product.
Then you are the product.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you're being monetized. Your data is being monetized. Depending on your YouTube history, what you're watching, you'll get served up ads which cater to that. And advertisers pay a lot of money to serve you those ads. So there's obviously the creator. So when you look at a company like YouTube, for example, they have a platform. And they effectively take a tax. It could be like a 40-50% tax on every
higher
video
than
that's
that
there.
Generally, because it's a black box, so you don't know how
you never
much
know, and you can go by the numbers they disclose.
And you have to hit a certain number of subscriber counts, views every month in order to get a small piece of that monetization.
Yeah.
If you don't hit it, you're not going to get anything, but YouTube is still going to collect revenue.
They're still going to collect revenue.
Your data.
And then you look at who's actually doing all the hard work. Being a creator is a very difficult job. You're going there, you got to keep making videos every day, you got to keep stay relevant, post important content, and a big part of their earnings actually come to things like sponsorships or partnerships with other companies.
Yes.
YouTube cannot entirely pay for the lifestyle, and we always look at the top 5 or 10 creators and say, hey, they're so rich and they made so much money. Mr. Beast, we look at Mr. Beast, but there's a ton. So there's probably hundreds of thousands of creators who didn't make it, or who can't even make enough, although their videos may be engaging. They don't have the number of views as some of the top 10. So effectively, these people are the people who are working the most, but who are also not making that much. It's YouTube or the company in the middle, Facebook, who's harvesting the data, selling it to advertisers and monetizing it. The other part, the real problem also is there's no rules around it. So if you make content that they may deem offensive or inappropriate, or they don't like you for whatever reason, you could be deplatformed. And for a creator who's making his living this way, it's like losing their job, right? Their primary way of earning a living. If Mr. Beast was deplatformed, you can imagine what's going to happen, right?
Well, he has a lot of people who will rally in his support.
Correct, they will. And
then the platform would probably reinstate him again. But there are a lot of creators who don't have that kind
who don't
of
have
support.
that, exactly.
They work very hard to hit their milestones, the first 100 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers. And I have seen these companies even take down accounts with 30, 40,000 subscribers. And the creators not able to get back those accounts. And they have to start all over again from scratch. The worst thing is, once you're deplatformed, you don't even get access to the platform to get your data off of the platform.
Correct. And you don't even know who your subscribers are. So if you wanted to go to a different platform and all of that, everything is controlled by the middlemen. Yeah.
That is why when it comes to marketing, all of the companies, they push everyone who is marketing to an audience to collect their email IDs. Right? Because people might still dismiss email as, hey, it's done. However, email marketing is still one of the more effective forms of marketing. And having your subscribers' email list is actually very invaluable. Because as you said, right, if you're moving platforms, let's say you're not very happy with all the cage fight between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, and you're like, oh, they could keep running their dick measuring contests. Actually, a family friendly station shouldn't be doing that, but that's been the talk of the town these days on Twitter. And I feel like, what has the world come to? If this is what the CEOs are talking about, that let's host a contest for measuring anatomical body parts, I'm like, okay, what's happening? Are we really in a truly progressive world? But if you want to move from Twitter to another decentralized platform like Blue Sky, which I don't know how many people know about it, but it is Jack Dorsey's latest Twitter version, which is decentralized. And it's by invite only. So a lot of people are looking for invitations for Blue Sky. But if you want to move from Twitter to Blue Sky, you have to build your audience all over again from scratch. It is decentralized, yes, but you have to keep posting on Twitter and hope that Twitter doesn't ban you, because in between Twitter had even banned link trees, right? So you could not have URL shorteners in your profile, especially if the URL shorteners that bio page had links to other platforms. So you are at the mercy of these platforms, even though you are the one who has brought them users.
Exactly. And what you mentioned there, Soniya, was very important, is the platforms have unwritten rules around what they'll censor or not censor, or what they'll do. And it's up to their whims or fancies. And there's no way to contest it. It's not like you can take the platform to court and say, reinstate my account or things like that.
Because every time with a new upgrade, we are agreeing to the terms and conditions.
And then if Elon and Zuckerberg could do whatever they want because that's their platforms, whereas the rest of us cannot, right? So it's a different set of rules for different people. And what you said before was also very important, is blockchain is immutable. It doesn't get affected by human emotions. The Ethereum community likes to say code is law. So whatever is in the smart contract is what the law is, right? And with these decentralized social media platforms, I think there's still more time before they go mainstream. But you essentially are in control of your own destiny. You could have your digital identity. You could move to a different platform. You can take all of those things with you because you have your own digital identity. And you're not going to get shut down because whatever you said is not does not agree with the rules of the platform. And then you can engage directly with the audience. There's no middleman, or there's no person in the middle or entity in the middle that one sets their own rules and then takes a cut out of every dollar you earn. So these are, I think, technologies which are, again, very early. They got quite a ways to go. But, even from an experience perspective, it took YouTube a long time to get as seamless and nice as we see it now. Likewise for Netflix, I still remember getting DVDs in the mail. So it's taken them a good 15 years or so to get to where they're at now. and it took them time to get more content and, obviously more material on the platform that people want to view. So decentralized social media is in very early days,
I know
And,
everybody has been talking about the AI hype,
Uh-huh.
and AI is real.
Correct.
It's not like AI is going anywhere. I am quite tired of people comparing AI versus Web3 because
Yeah.
they are both tech stacks.
Correct.
You don't have to compare, you don't have to choose one versus the
Yeah.
other. They are both going to work
Mhm.
seamlessly together in building the kind of systems you want to build.
Yeah.
For example, Web3 transparency and immutability
Correct.
can add a layer of governance to AI because all of us are afraid about how AI is going to work, and a lot of the AI systems today are black boxes.
Correct.
But smart contracts, if the AI systems were also governed by smart contracts, you could see how these AI systems are functioning
Yeah.
and what are the decisions that are being made that could be put on chain,
Correct.
right? And there would be transparency. So I don't look at AI versus Web3. However, AI in the concept of AI started all the way back in like 1940s or 50s, right? With
Correct.
the initial conversations that started in Europe, where you had a
Yeah.
groups of scientists come together.
Mhm.
You had the Turing machine, which
Yeah.
the Enigma
Mhm.
code, right?
Yeah.
I remember imitation games, which was from World War II.
Correct.
It's that old. AI is that old. And today we are talking about AI hype.
Mhm.
Yes, this hype is driven by a new form of AI through transformers.
Correct.
But what we have to see, we have to think about the evolution.
Yeah.
AI has not revolutionized the industry in the past 20 years.
Mhm.
It has done that over a period of 70 plus years.
Yeah.
Also, when we talk about internet, we
Mhm.
all feel like, the internet has taken the world by storm. Yes, it has taken the world by storm. And a lot of blockchain is actually
Correct.
dependent on the internet. In fact, people are now looking at alternate methods where, they could still process transactions off chain.
Yeah.
So there isn't an inherent dependency on internet. But as you said, we are still early.
Early.
The reason I'm mentioning this is because Bitcoin decentralization blockchain really started in 2008.
Mhm.
Internet, the birth of internet is considered to be in 1983.
Correct.
And then publicly it was available to people
Yeah.
in 1993.
Mhm.
So even with the internet and all of these businesses that have been built, it has been in the works since 1983.
Yeah.
It's not anything that feels like an overnight success is not an overnight success, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't get adopters overnight.
Yeah.
It's all thanks to years and decades of work that has been done. I
Exactly.
just wanted to present that perspective. We are talking about data ownership here, right? Now, we spoke about how these advertisers, when we are giving our data to these platforms,
Mhm.
these platforms make money from it.
Correct.
What would be the Web3 version of these platforms? Can you help explain it to the audiences of the Silicon Dreams and Radio Zindagi?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Web3 version over the long term will look very similar to the Web2 version. So once we have like a Web3 YouTube, I know there's a protocol called Lens as well that's working on like a social graph type of network. It should, ideally over the long term look exactly like you'd be using Facebook or Twitter or any other network, Blue Sky as well. So for the end user, the experience should be seamless. The difference being when you log into it or you're a creator and you log in, your identity, right now your identity is held by Facebook. And then you log in through Facebook through other applications, or that's where your core digital identity lives. But you could be with a decentralized protocol where you control your own identity or digital identity, and then you can log into any app, whether it's a video streaming app or if it's a social network. You're taking your identity to all these platforms. So you don't have to go onto a new platform like you mentioned and then build 100,000 users or email them saying, hey, I'm, YouTube deplatform me. I'm going to go to the other, I'm going to go to Facebook Live or whatever that is. Your digital identity is with you. It carries over to a different platform. And what blockchain technology does is there's a concept of public and private keys, and you're the owner of the private key. So you can decide, what you're going to do. You kind of control your destiny. You can take your audience to a different platform if you wanted. You could go to, as a creator, as a person who's keeping your audience engaged, you go to any platform to get your content out. And what that does is effectively sets up a very competitive system. Right now, technology is very monopolistic. FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google kind of control everything. They have the power. But let's say you're a creator or you're a person who's super popular on Facebook or Twitter and you decide to move on to a different platform, there's nothing you can do, right? You cannot reach your audience directly. But once you had that power through digital identity, which blockchain technology enables, you could go to any platform. So even these marketplaces will be competitive. They'll want to ensure that they're competitive to come to get you onto their platform to build content for them. So you could go to TikTok, for example, without having to go and build your audience again from scratch. If YouTube deplatforms you, or if TikTok doesn't like you tomorrow, you could go back to another platform, and you could take your audience with you. So that's kind of the entire idea of Web3 is the platforms have less power, and they're mainly streaming content, or they're giving you like a forum to put your content out, and they don't take as much of a cut as the current platforms do, and they don't set the rules either.
Yeah, and then a lot of these platforms would be governed by contracts, so
Correct.
you can actually there is transparency in understanding how much is the platform earning versus how much is the creator earning. Most Web3 platforms, I have seen them keep their cuts to as low as 10 to 20%.
Correct.
And it is visible on the blockchain,
Yeah.
and you can see whether they are charging more or they are charging lesser. Even as a consumer, I feel there is a lot of power when you go on these platforms. I feel as a consumer, especially that data ownership and right to privacy is important for these platforms. So what will happen is when we go in as a consumer to any of these platforms, we will be able to actually set the rules that which data would I like to be targeted on. I may not like to be targeted based on my relationship status, but if I am looking for holiday packages, my browsing history, I don't mind being targeted on that because I like a good vacation deal. Who doesn't like a good vacation deal? So you're able to do that. Plus you're able to see who all gets access to the data, because that is important. When I give my access to Facebook, we have seen cases like the Cambridge analytics case, right, where that data was being used for political targeting, right? And that was such a big, and they got away with a slap on the wrist. That's literally what I'm going to say, because for the manipulation that was caused because of that data, they really got away with a slap on the wrist. However, in blockchain, you should, as long as the data does not leave the DLT, it does not leave the blockchain, you can see who all has access to the data. And with new systems that are being built, let's say if your data is being sent to political parties, you could actually revoke access to your data. And I feel that is very important for consumers as well. We have creators where, as you said, the creators can take their identity, and part of that identity is also the content that they create. A lot of these platforms, the content created by the creators stays with the creators. And as users, you have a lot more control over your privacy. Over, again, also your identity. Nischal, this was such an amazing conversation. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up because we are at the end of the show. I would love for you to share a few parting thoughts, with our audiences of the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi before we officially bid farewell.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just say, this is all very disruptive technology, AI, crypto. It's going to take time. So we will definitely, I'm confident that we'll see widespread adoption of these technologies in my lifetime. And these are very transformative technologies. So we got to be patient. We won't see the results right away, just like every other technology. And they've been in the works for a very long time. So, hang in there and keep up to speed with it. It's going to revolutionize our lives in the future.
Well, thank you, Nischal. So the parting message, guys, keep your eyes wide open. Be open to the power of these transformative technologies. Stay in the know, and we will bring you more episodes to help you stay in the know on AI and Web3 on the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi 1550 AM. Until we meet next time on Monday, this is Sonia, your show host and the founder of Orbis86, signing off. Take care and have a great week ahead.